From Southeast Asia to the Middle East, BRICS is evolving, expanding its reach, steering debate and shaking the foundations of global governance. With Indonesia's official entry and new partner nations on the horizon, the bloc now represents over half of the world's population and more than 40% of the global GDP. Yet behind this momentum lies hesitation, tension, and strategic ambiguity. As Saudi Arabia and Turkey weigh their options and Trump's return to power reawakens fears of a confrontational world order, BRICS stands at a crossroads. Is this coalition truly building an alternative to Western hegemony, or is it heading towards internal fragmentation? I'm Henny Saif, and this is Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Welcome back. As Brazil prepares to host the BRICS summit this July, the bloc is navigating a critical moment. Indonesia formally joined BRICS in January, marking a major Southeast Asian addition. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, once seen as key prospects, have yet to accept invitations. Their hesitation reveals the bloc's limitations in converting interests into full alignment. Indonesia's move reflects a multi-alignment strategy. Despite BRICS membership, Jakarta remains engaged with the US and Japan. Saudi Arabia is leveraging its ambiguity to engage with one. Turkey offered only partner status, has expressed frustration but continues to explore options. As foreign policy notes, Trump's return has accelerated de-dollarization efforts among BRICS members, pushing them to explore financial mechanisms like local currency trade and the proposed BRICS Clear settlement system. But as BRICS grows, it faces a test of cohesion. Will the bloc evolve into a strategic pillar of the Global South or remain a fragmented forum of competing interests? Is BRICS reshaping global order? From Indonesia's bold move to Egypt's strategic role, what does this mean for the future of the power politics?
BRICS bloc is undergoing a transformative phase with its expansion, including Indonesia's accession to the new development bank, NDB, and overtures to Saudi Arabia and Turkey. This signals a potential recalibration of global power dynamics, challenging Western institutions like the G7 and IMF. Egypt's role in BRICS is becoming increasingly pivotal as it seeks to position itself as a regional economic powerhouse, bridging Africa, the Middle East, and the Global South. Cairo has expressed interest in aligning with BRICS' development-focused agenda, leveraging its strategic location and robust infrastructure projects, particularly through initiatives like the Suez Canal Economic Zone. Egypt views BRICS membership as an opportunity to diversify partnerships beyond traditional Western frameworks. Indonesia's rapid integration into the NDB underscores shared motivations among emerging economies to counterbalance US-China tensions. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Turkey remain cautious, balancing their geopolitical interests between BRICS and long-standing alliances. Their hesitation highlights internal divisions within BRICS, raising questions about cohesion as the bloc expands beyond its shared ideological foundations. Trump-era foreign policies emphasized unilateralism, pushing rising powers toward alternative multilateral platforms. However, BRICS faces structural challenges in establishing itself as a credible counterweight to Western institutions, while initiatives like gold-backed stablecoins aim to challenge dollar hegemony. the bloc's institutional credibility remains uncertain without unified governance mechanisms. BRICS diversity is a double-edged sword. While it broadens influence, varied national priorities hinder cohesive decision-making. Nevertheless, its growing significance reflects widespread dissatisfaction with existing systems, particularly among developing nations seeking equitable financial frameworks. Rather than outright disruption, BRICS represents strategic diversification. Its ability to evolve from a diplomatic coalition into an effective global alternative depends on resolving internal fractures, while capitalizing on emerging opportunities in multipolar geopolitics.
And joining us now to shed more light on this topic, we're joined from Beijing by Dr. Inar Tanjin, the Senior Fellow at the Taihe Institute and Chairman of the Asia Narratives Substack. And from Cairo, we're joined by Dr. Mohammed Osman, the International Affairs Specialist. Gentlemen, welcome to Tank. Dr. Tanjin, now BRICS expansion has added weight, but internal divides remain. Is the bloc at any risk of losing cohesion as it grows?
Of course, there's always issues about cohesion. That's one of the reasons that membership has been slowed down. There has to be some sort of a way of not ending up like the UN, permanently deadlocked. And there's no permanent secretariat at this point. So it is still in the growing phase. But I would emphasize some of the things you said in the report in the sense that the BRICS is not something that came about because the world was perfect. It came about because you have, basically 600 years of colonialism that has a kind of zero reality, and it's falling apart. The post-World War II institutions have been undermined by the very entity that created. At this point, it's a survival, creating a multipolar world which has arrived. And the question is, how do you organize that? If you have too many voices, you can't move. If you don't have enough voices, you're not representative. So it's always a question of how you balance it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Osman, do you believe that the global views BRICS as a genuine alternative, a reaction, as Dr. Tanjin has mentioned, to Western institutions, or is it just merely a symbolic correlation?
Thank you, Hani, for having me. Greetings to you and to your dear guest. Of course, I do agree with the assessment that the BRICS are basically a reaction to a history of hegemony and domination by Western powers of global politics for the better part of the past 3 centuries, at least. And I think that it is an attempt to create a forum in which a more genuine multilateralism can be enacted, whether economically or even politically, and which it is supposed theoretically to pave the way for a multi-polar world. And I think this is the essence that BRICS has become, from an economic forum into something that is more comprehensive. However, we cannot consider it really a bloc in the sense of the G7, for example, because it lacks harmony and cohesion so far. Because BRICS, so far there are 10 full members of BRICS, and this includes countries that have a very antagonistic relationship with one another. Just to give a few examples, out of quite a bunch. For example, you have countries like China and India, countries that are competing powers, have their own differences, that have their own territorial conflicts. They are economic competitive. India is situated in a manner against South Asia, and vice versa. And for example, another example is Egypt and Ethiopia, for example, 2 countries that have huge disagreements over water security and riparian rights and so on and so forth, the UAE and Iran. So that's the problem. And I think what Dr. Tanjin has mentioned about slowing down the membership expansion process is to correspond to this reality, because at the end of the day, and some countries, even members of BRICS or partner states, for example, are using the idea of BRICS membership or BRICS partnership in order to leverage in terms of economic and political relations. However, this doesn't mean that BRICS is irrelevant. On the contrary, it is the nucleus of something that challenges the status quo, that challenges the idea that the unipolar moment will remain, because it has long passed years ago. And reality now dictate a multipolar world that should be efficient and cohesive in a manner, especially that the United States is not really interested in maintaining its leadership over the globalized economic. Even Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, in a historic statement that he made about a month ago, he admitted that the world has become a multi-polar world, and that the United States is one of those global powers. Basically, I don't know whether he intended to do that or not, but he was basically admitting that the United States is forfeiting its role as one in the world. The BRICS are a nucleus for South-South cooperation, for an augmented voice of the global South. However, it does still face immense challenges. And again, as Dr. Tanjan has mentioned, it has no secretariat. It's not an international organization of this sort. So it means that it still lacks the structural entity that can serve its purposes. The only institution that exists for so far is the new development bank. It's a very promising monetary institution that finances developmental projects in many countries around the world. However, not all the BRICS members are members of the NDB. Ironically, still it cannot really compete with entities such as the IMF, World Bank. So, however, I think that
do you assess Indonesia's entry? Does it reflect growing BRICS legitimacy or a carefully hedged strategy?
Well, I mean, how many alternatives do you have? I mean, the United States, I understand my colleague, and I thank you for his kind words, but you have Donald Trump, military to, in essence, take things, extract more value from the rest of the world, claiming that the United States has been a victim. So Marco Rubio's vision, as he put out a month ago, actions and his daily prognostications about what he's going to do to which country are at odds. So in terms of how countries view it, the BRICS is not like Quad, NATO, either a part of what Europe and America have is this idea that you have to have consensus. 1% rules and everyone else can just lump it. The global South has for many millenniums had civilization that on managing what they had inside. Eventually fell to the barbarians who military equipment and have been able to extract value for many years. But now the tide is changing, and it is time for these previously subjected countries to figure out how they want to go forward and what model is. And I firmly believe that the only way that you can go forward in a multipolar world is not you're either with me or against me, but how do we work together? You have countries who have very different ideas, and in cases frictions, who are actually joining together, because in the end, every country wants the same things. They want security. They want to have a path to development that allows them to aid their people to become, better off. And lastly, they want respect, and respect for their sovereignty and their cultures. Many countries have a blending of many very complex threads that make up a very rich tapestry, but also very complicated one. It is time for the world to stop thinking that it only needs to know what understand what each other wants, to tell each other their stories so that they can come to some sort of understanding that promotes peace and prosperity. Now, these all sound like, very pie in the sky words, but I really mean it. You have two choices when you come to a multipolar world: chaos, everyone going out for themselves, realpolitik ideas where it's only friendship, or you go the civilization. Trust is necessary to govern a world where you have complex relations, especially in terms of logistics and supply chain, etc. And that it has to be win-win. We have to have a common goal. We have to look at problems like the environment, health, as something that we work together on, not as something that can be weaponized against other countries.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Osman, now Saudi Arabia and Turkey have hesitated. They're weighing their options. What does this feel about BRICS' global appeal?
Well, it does not. Many countries are clamoring for applying for membership at BRICS, actually, and of Saudi Arabia and Turkey are regional powers in the Middle East, and both have their own vested interests and very complicated relationships with many countries, whether in the East and with the West in general. So, for example, in the case of Saudi Arabia was extended a full membership offer, and so far it has not confirmed that it accepts the offer, and still it's been 2 years now, and still it has not accepted. And it's very clear that Saudi Arabia is using the prospects of the largest oil producer in the world and the leading country in OPEC plus joining BRICS as a bargaining card with the United States and the West in general, in order to extract more of further Saudi Arabia partner of the West, while at the same time maintaining a cordial relationship with countries like China and Russia. On the other hand, the two other global powers that are basically the main proponents, geopolitically at least, of BRICS. So I think that's the idea when it comes to Saudi Arabia. Turkey, it's a bit different because Turkey was never extended a full membership. Turkey applied for a full membership. However, it was only extended a partnership status, which was frustrating for the Turks, and that's why they have been reluctant to accept it so far. And I think one of the reasons that admitted yet as a full member is that they are a NATO member. Turkey has applied to become a member of the European Union and has been applicant for EU membership for about 20 years, and this has been a source of tension between Turkey and the EU. The idea of its very late or the EU's reluctance to admit it into the European Union, even though it is one of the largest economies in the world. So Turkey pivoted towards BRICS in this regards, in a way that it was sending certain signals to the world, that we have to the West, that we have other, and primarily the Europeans, that we have other options and that we can explore other venues of economic integration and cooperation. However, when they were not offered a full membership, they have been reluctant to take this partnership status. And what Dr. Tanjan has said in terms of the United States, yes, Trump does exercise absolute unilateralism, and he does try to leverage U.S. interests above all else, and this is true. And he's acting like a 19th century imperial power, basically, the U.S. under Trump. Yet, at the same time, the United States is clearly not interested in maintaining control over the globalized world order, the globalization model that has been basically the governing structure of the world, through which the United States has exercised its hegemony since World War II, and especially after the end of the Cold War and the entry world into the unipolar moment after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc. Trump is not interested in that anymore, and if anything, he is trying to dismantle this governing structure, and it basically translates into the United States losing a substantial amount of influence. And actually, Trump's unilateralism and the way by which he deals, not even only with his opponents, but even with his country's allies in Europe and Canada and other parts of the world, actually diminishes confidence in the United States and diminishes respect in the United States in many respects, and will push other countries to find alternatives. Even the Europeans now are trying at least to maintain to explore further cooperation with the global South and with China, for example, in terms of economic cooperation, since China is the largest trade partner of the EU and pretty much most of the world. They are trying to separate their foreign policy towards China from that of the United States. I don't think they will be successful in this regard, because the US has way too much influence over the European Union, but it does tell of how little confidence the US enjoys among its allies now. For example, Trump is trying to mediate an end to the Russo-Ukrainian war by completely sidelining and excluding the Europeans, for example, from the conversation, even though the Europeans were dragged into this war by proxy against Russia through Ukraine by the United States, by the administration,
yes,
before that Obama administration. Yeah, please go ahead.
Dr. Tanjan, now you've mentioned that countries should make a choice and take sides. Now with Trump's return, unilateralism and the threats of tariffs, how might BRICS respond, especially regarding the de-dollarization?
Well, with all due deference, I don't agree. That's not exactly what I said. I do believe that the United States is doing. They have an attitude that you're either with us or against us. And that is not the way BRICS has been set up. It is voluntary. People want to join. Countries want to join, mainly to defend themselves. Large geopolitics, Trump. Everyone's worried about Trump, but that doesn't mean that joining, this group will, as you have pointed out, automatically solve your problems. That's going to take a lot of hard work, consensus building, and creating a structure. And that's going to take quite a bit of time to do. It could be hastened in the case of currency. If Donald Trump goes forward with his idea of devaluing the U.S. dollar by 30%, that would have a major shock in the world, and it would have for the currency system, the U.S. trade dollar. The second point I'd like to make is that the U.S. is walking away from the world. It's not dismantling anything. It just doesn't care anymore. What it wants to do is extract value. And we've seen that exactly in Ukraine, where they said, you got to give us your nuclear power plants, and you got to give us the half your minerals.
Yes.
You see it, in Israel, where they say you have to give us Gaza. Mm-hmm. And most recently, during this interlude where the Secretary of War plans for bombing the Houthis, you heard them, you could see quite clearly from their discourse, they were talking about, how do we get value out of this?
Yes.
There was nothing about the cost of human life, etc. So it's about value, and in the other instance, it's not about yes or no. It's about arriving at a just end solution where you can win-win without burning bridges.
Yes. Dr. Inar Tanjan from Beijing and Dr. Mohammed Osman from Cairo. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights. BRICS has expanded, but at what cost? Its size now rivals the G7, but unity remains elusive. As Trump's policies steer old fears and new alliances, BRICS is forced to define its purpose or risk dilution. Is this the future of a global power or the beginning of a multipolar chaos? We will be finding out. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of Think Tank. I'm Henny Seif. Thank you for joining us.